do a quick intro, Patrick, for those that maybe have joined. So this may be our, hopefully it's not, well, I don't know, should I hope it's our last pre-Brexit meeting or not? It'll be one of our last pre-Brexit meetings. And we've invited the Department of Agriculture to give us a brief presentation about products which will require SPS checks, just so that you have an increased awareness. These goods cannot bond directly to your TSF from the port. So when you're planning your groupage loads coming in, if you have products within these ranges, you're going to have to allow for the fact that they will have to be cleared at the port. And it's whole duck or no dinner. The whole trailer gets cleared at the port, not part of it. So if you have SPS goods on board, all of that trailer gets cleared at the port. So Patrick very kindly is joining us to give us a brief overview. We're going to share the slides. So Patrick has some slides identifying cargoes, and then there are more slides there about how to move freight through the port, which are SPS. And there's very good videos on the agricultural website as well that you could look at. So over to you, Patrick. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the intro, Tom. So I'm a VI down in Dublin Port, part of import controls operations, where we're trying to get everything up and running. I think we'll be working right up until 2359 on December 31st. So anyway, it's just to kind of, I was asked just to go through some of the products that are going to be of interest to the Department of Agriculture, and then other products that you may not be aware of that we may not have an interest in, but other government agencies would. So I'm just going to briefly talk about those as well, just to draw your attention to them, because when I was talking to Seamus yesterday, there were a couple of areas that people had expressed concerns about. So I'll bring those up. Just to briefly go through the most common ones that are going to be, so I'm sure you'd all be aware of these, but it's just to briefly go through them again. All live animals coming through the port are obviously going to be required to have checks. That's full documentary, identity, and physical checks, with very few exceptions for physical checks, but everything certainly requires documentary and ID checks. Then more commonly, what we'll be dealing with, and this is going to be the bulk of the department's interest, is going to be any products of animal origin or anything that contains products of animal origin. So just going through the list here, you're looking at meat, it's going to be fresh or frozen. So in this, I'd be thinking about things like beef and pork, or beef steaks are obviously going to be a big one coming in that we'd be looking at. And I guess exporting is an area where we're going to be doing as well. The meat products is anything that has been processed, anything that has undergone some sort of processing, isn't in its raw state anymore. So we're thinking about things here like bacon and cooked meats, salamis and tinned meats. And as you may be aware, there's negotiations going on between the EU and the UK at the moment, because currently under EU legislation, we cannot import chilled meat products from third countries, and obviously that's going to be a major problem with things like any of the Marks and Spencer's ready meals would be a common one that we'd be looking at, and technically under the law we won't be able to import those, so we're negotiating to try and get that sorted. Fish and fish products come in a bit separately. We're talking here anything that's frozen or tinned or fresh, smoked or breaded, fish fingers, your battered cod, all of that. Fish oils are included here as well. And when we talk about fish, it's not just fish, but it's mollusks and crustaceans, so all of the shellfish that are listed there. So any of the products that would contain any of those we're looking at. Then dairy, so milk, cheese, cream, yogurt, anything from raw milk all the way through to processed dairy products, the department's going to have an interest in, and checks will be required. And then poultry meat, which is part of the overall meat thing. Anyway, but you're talking here obviously chicken, but turkey and duck and anything that contains those products. So chicken nuggets all the way through to chicken sandwiches require, depending on what the final product is, different types of checks. And then eggs and egg products, and again all the way through from raw eggs designed for human consumption to processed products containing eggs such as omelette. So those are all, I think, fairly obvious and clear, and hopefully any of you that will be dealing with that are aware of those. Some of the less common ones that I think we just need to kind of start to flag, honey is one, and this is something that We haven't had any dealings with the UK on it so far, but we have had problems with imports from other third countries where people have not been aware that honey requires veterinary checks. So it is something that we definitely need to bring to people's attention. Anything containing gelatin or collagen, again, we're going back to these contain products of animal origin, and therefore they will require veterinary checks. Animal casings. By this we mean anything derived from intestine, particularly sheep intestine. These can be used to make surgical sutures, sausage casings. So that's something that we need to get checks on. The next one here, the raw hides, skins, and untreated leather. The degree of checks that are needed, what type of checks are needed, will depend on exactly what has been done with that product. And this will go all the way through from a hide that may have not had very much treatment, a short salted treatment or something like that, all the way through to a fully tanned leather. And again, the degree of checks. These checks are risk-based, and what we have to look is what is the risk to public health, what is the risk to animal health. So there's obviously a massive difference between hide or leather that hasn't really been treated all the way through to something fully treated, for instance, a leather couch, you know, even though that's technically going to contain product of animal origin. Game trophies and bones and skeletons, and just bringing in beneath there, it looks a bit alarming, dead animals.
Will we be paying them or the receiver? Right.
The agent responsible for the this is where
euros.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Well, this is where you need to have an agent responsible for the consignment who is going to present these to the port for examination. What will happen in some of these instances, you see, is that we will be flagged these by customs. What often happens is that customs will know that a product is coming in with a particular CN code. And what they're going to do is say, right, this CN code is for hides and leather. We want the department to check this out to see whether checks are going to be required on that. And that's what we call target files. And so the department is made aware of those, and we'll carry out an investigation as to whether or not that's going to be, whether or not any further veterinary checks are needed on that, or whether that isn't required. But this is where, if you think that you are going to be bringing in products like this that are going to be of interest to the department, you need to have somebody responsible for that consignment registered with the department, and that person has to be based in the EU. It cannot be based in the UK from the 1st of January. So technically, the agent responsible for consignment is for the department to have a point of contact to deal with all of these. If they are required to go through the whole health certification and sheds and all of that, they will be the one who the department will look for payment from. But the arrangement between the agent and the importer, if they're two separate entities, is obviously between themselves, you know. So that's really what we're looking at there. Just briefly going through the rest of the products that are here. You can see some of them are fairly obvious. Pet food, not for human consumption, but obviously still of animal origin. And bird feed that will contain mealworms or insects. So seeds and plants come under different regulations, whereas if it's got bird feed, there are regulations attached to that, and they would need to be checked as well. Or certainly they need to be brought to the attention of the department, and then we will determine what level of checks or official controls are going to be needed at the port. But as Tom said at the start, it's because we want to know, sometimes these aren't going to require further checks, and we'll be able to say, no, this is fine, this can come through, or not. But it's for us to try and determine that in advance as much as possible so that we can keep things moving, essentially. Just briefly to talk about composite products as well, which people may or may not be fully aware of. So these are foodstuffs intended for human consumption that are processed products of animal origin and products of plant origin. And there's some examples listed there. Lasagna and pizzas would be two of the common ones, but even ice cream, dairy and sugar, and it's processed dairy, so therefore it's a composite product. The reason I bring this up is that, again, the level of checks that are required for composite products will vary depending on the type and also sometimes the percentage. Anything with meat in it, so any meat pizza requires veterinary checks and all that goes with that, health certification and sheds. Whereas if you're bringing in a dairy product that has only a low percentage of dairy and is from an approved UK establishment, that's probably not going to require checks. There are derogations in the law for certain types of composite products. So again, that speeds things up and reduces obviously the administrative and the financial burden on companies that will be importing those products. But again, it's important for us to be able to identify these products with enough notice. That's why there is a pre-notification in law of 24 hours that we are alerted to these, and we can hopefully determine what types of checks are going to be needed. I think just to kind of take away from it that you really have to kind of bear in mind that anything that contains products of animal origin, POAO, has to be considered as being of interest to the department. And as I said before, what will happen in these instances that the CN codes are flagged by customs and then brought to the attention of the department via the target files. And based on what we do there, we'll determine whether or not those products need the intensified controls, such as the health certificate or the SHED, which is the common health entry document. So that's just a kind of a brief overview of the type of products that the department will have an interest in. Anything that you do have queries about, as I say, definitely you need to talk with your supplier in the UK, and their official veterinarian will hopefully be able to give them guidance as well. On our side, we've got a lot of contact points. We've got the attachment there, or the link to the government website on agriculture and Brexit, the phone call, the dedicated Brexit helpline, and 2 emails there, a more general Brexit one, and then specifically the Dublin Port one if there are any queries. And we'll often get queries from agents acting on behalf of importers as to what types of checks are needed. Those are actually going to increase greatly now, but we're all doing our best to try and get back to people as quickly as possible on these. As I said at the outset, there are certain other goods that are going to be of interest to other agencies, and one of these is going to be the HSE. So it was Seamus just raised it with me yesterday that people have concerns about food products of non-animal origin, but particularly food contact materials. So the trays or any material that the food is being brought in, cosmetic products, and then tobacco and tobacco-related products. These won't be under the remit of DAFM, but the HSE may well have an interest in these. It'll depend on the risk, again, that's associated with these. And it's typically the high-risk products of non-animal origin, of plant origin typically, that are going to be really require more controls from the HSE's point of view. And one of these is going to be rice that comes in from China via Liverpool. If that comes into Liverpool and then to Dublin, its point of entry into the EU is going to be Dublin. And that is a high-risk PONAO, and that is going to require official checks. So the HSE will be carrying out those checks there. The next slide there, just on the HSE, shows the contact points for them. As I'm not going to go into too much detail with them, but you've got an email address to contact them. The YouTube video just gives a nice overview of the type of products that may be of interest to the HSE, and the website again will just give an overview and a list of those, but you'll be able to contact them directly just to get a more in-depth information if needs be. Now, so that's DAFM and HSE, the type of things that we're going to be interested in that you need to check. Now, the one area, and I know this has come up before in relation to what the controls or what the regulations are going to be from January 1st, and essentially it is going to change with regards to the ISPM. So the position of the UK and the EU is pretty much going to be the same on this. So all wood packaging material, including pallets that used to move goods, will need to meet the ISPM 15 standard. So traders with the UK, importers and exporters, need to ensure that the WPM they use in their supply chain is compliant with the ISPM 15 from the 1st of January. The next slide there just gives a link to the government, the information on our website, on the DAFM website. So in-depth material there on ISPM 15, and particularly then what the regulations and requirements are going to be with the UK. And the basis for this is really, there's the two next slides will kind of show that. So with third countries, it's that most third countries, which obviously we know are non-EU countries, which will obviously include the UK, have adopted ISPM as the required standard. So the majority of EU exports to third countries already require the WPM. Doesn't generally apply to intra-EU trade, but again, just reiterating, the traders with the UK, importers and exporters, will need to ensure it. And then this slide just kind of shows that the EU position and the UK position on this are pretty much the same. The EU position is that wood packaging material can only be introduced into the Union if compliant with the treatment as mark, as in ISPM 15. And the UK position is pretty much the same, that they have to undergo heat treatment and marking. They regard that, the EU position is that WPM will be subject to official checks either upon or after entry to the EU. The UK are going to do it on a risk-targeted basis only. I think the last sentence just kind of shows, the plant health risk imported from WPM imported from the EU is not expected to change. We wouldn't expect that, but it's not an issue about the risk. In all instances, unfortunately, this is an issue where simply the regulations will change, and obviously, depending on the final outcome of any negotiations, we'll have to know if that will apply. But for now, we have to assume that is going to apply. Just final, there's a link there just to videos that we have given to webinars, and that have been given mainly by my colleague Noreen Galvin and my John Higgins on a lot of these. Just briefly, if we just go down, actually, I'll just see, where is it? It is slide 24 there on the regulation of wood packaging. So this is just what we're going through there is a presentation that Noreen, my colleague Noreen, gave a couple of weeks ago, just on the import control processes. So it's a nice overview of that, and that's going to be made available to all of you. But this one then is just to back up about the regulation of the WPM. Again, and the idea behind it is obviously to help prevent the spread of disease and insects that can negatively affect trees, plants, or ecosystems. All the wood packaging, so that's your pallets, crates, boxes, dunnage, must be treated and stamped. Stamp is there, and as it states that there's no derogation on these requirements. So I think that is pretty clear, and that it doesn't really leave a lot of wiggle room, unfortunately, on that requirement. And if you can just go to the last slide there, to 29. So just gives us, so as I say, the import section on the website and the Brexit section. And then if you have any queries, just to reiterate, that's the email address to go to, and we'll hopefully be able to answer them for you, at least steer you in the right direction on that anyway. Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Patrick. Couple of quick questions, if I could, Patrick. Is there a list of tariff codes that the members could look at, or that we could show them, that they would know that they need to be aware of these particular products because they may be subject to controls?
I can't think of a DAFM specific list at the moment. I know that the regulation that includes all the CN codes is Regulation 2658/87 of EEC, and you need to look at the consolidated version of that. I will see if I can find a DAFM specific list of that, but certainly that's the EU list will be found at that particular regulation.
Okay, like there's an obvious set, the first three chapters or first three sections probably in tariff would be fairly obvious that they'd have potentials and throws. But after that, it's kind of the, you know, the pallet of beans or something that we might have. Like, it could be an issue with them. You know, if we had a pallet of processed beans, could that be an issue?
Well, no, I mean, that's a fully processed food. It's of non-animal origin. Again, as long as your WPM is ISBN 15 compliant, that's certainly not going to be undergoing any kind of veterinary checks. You know, we're not going to be looking at that. And I would imagine that to be, given that it's processed, to be a low risk food. I would say maybe clarify that with the Import Control Division of HSE to be sure, or possibly Plant Health and Agriculture, but you're probably better directing that toward the HSE because they will deal with the products of non-animal origin. So I wouldn't imagine so, Tom, to be honest.
Then if you have a pallet of biscuits?
Well, actually, this is one of the composite products. That's a great question, actually. And there are certain composite products that are pretty much exempt from checks. If you go to regulation 2005/275, and again, that's the most recent version of that. That is actually what we call the composite product regulation, which is going to change, but it gives a list of how products can be derogated, and certain types that will be derogated as well. And biscuits are actually included in that because they're essentially regarded as shelf stable. Any dairy product that's in it has been fully processed. So again, it's come down to, is there a risk associated with that to public or animal health? And really, it's negligible from that. So again, it's getting the notification in beforehand. You know, if we are notified that there are biscuits coming in, if we check what the product is, if we get any commercial documents to show what's in them, and we verify the ingredients are all fully processed above board, a little bit of work needs to be done, but they're not going to require veterinary checks. No.
And that work needs to be done in advance of the shipment taking place, or just with the 24
Oh
hours?
yeah, no, we would, I mean, we would definitely ask for any of this information to be given to us, certainly at the time that anything is being loaded in Britain. You know, if we can get that stuff emailed over to the BCP email, because then we can check it. Like, we're going to be 24/7 from the 28th of December. It's going to be vets on site and clerical inspectors all the time. So we get that information in advance. We'll be able to tell the importer or the agent whether or not anything is needed. It's definitely something we want to be checking out so that we can ensure that the movement through the port, when you get to the port, is as smooth as possible. You know, that if there are any checks needed, that we can either tell you, no, you're fine, you're going to be green or orange routed, or no, you know, we need to come in, do a seal check. But that's the kind of thing we want to know as much as possible before you get off the ferry, you know.
Okay. John Dawson had his hand up there.
Actually, could I ask you a question there? I found over the last good while, if we send a requirement to you to see is there health checks or something for a particular product, and you come back and you tell us no.
Yeah.
I'm finding every single time we have to go back to you and ask you the same question for the same product over and over again. Can that change in any way, please? So as we're not repeating ourselves, once we have it in writing for a particular product, that is sufficient. Because what's happening is, at the moment, if we send in a request to you, we have to put in the SAD number on it.
Yeah, okay.
And they're looking for the SAD number with the reply from the various departments on it. But if we had a reply for a particular product, just allowing us that there's no health checks on it, rather than having to go every single time inquiring, can somebody look at that for us, please?
No, we will, and I would hope that, look, I mean, the amount of administrative work that we're going to have to do is obviously going to increase exponentially, and we want to try and streamline this process as much as possible. Could I ask you, John, would you maybe be able to email that, just exactly what you're looking for, to the BCP email address? Because I can then, what I can do at that point, if I get access to that, is I can just kind of see if I can clarify that with the senior management, that we can, as I say, streamline that, because I absolutely agree. We want to be doing this, that we can say, right, you're fine for however length of time, and you don't need to check that product with us again, because absolutely it is a burden. And we want to try and streamline this as much as possible. So say if you email that to me, and I can certainly get that checked out, and I can hopefully get back to, you know, I guess what we'll do then is try and publicize that on the website as well, and maybe get back to you directly on that. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thanks, Patrick.
Lovely. No problem. Great. Great.
And then another couple of quickies, Patrick, if we could.
Yeah.
The BIFA at Dublin Airport, do we know when will it be fully operational?
We do not, and I'm afraid that we are just having a few difficulties getting that absolutely fully up and running at the moment. So I will endeavour to find a bit more information for you, but I'm afraid we are just having a little bit of trouble with that at the moment. Okay.
Okay. And liability, if something is wrong and a product needs to be destroyed, will the agent be held responsible in place of the UK entity?
The agent responsible for the consignment will be is the link with the department, so they will be actually held responsible for that. And the department will endeavour to get any financial penalties from that agent. What happens between them and the importer after that is outside of the remit. But essentially, if the agent is signing anything like a shed that needs to be, and then that product needs to be destroyed, the agent has signed that they are responsible for that. That's a legal contract that they enter into, you know. So once an agent is registered with DAFM, that's who we contact, that's who we look for the fees from. It's then between them and the importer as to what they want to do with regard to that. So that's beyond our remit.
And last one, could you repeat where we could find the EU list? I think you mentioned the regulation.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just see if I can dig it up here. Yeah, so it's the regulation. It's regulation 2658.
Yeah.
/87.
Yeah.
/EEC.
Yeah.
So this has the tariff and the nomenclature, the tariff and the statistical nomenclature for the common customs tariff. But just make sure when you do go into that, like that regulation it's 33 years old. You know, it's a regulation that came in 87. It's just been updated. So you need to make sure that when you go down into it that you click on what's called the latest consolidated version, because that will take all amendments that have been made into account to make sure that you've got the most up-to-date information there.
Great.
Okay.
Super. Thanks a million, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Not at all. You're very welcome.
We should be getting lots of emails too, I'd say. So.
Absolutely. And any email queries, anything that's coming in, either send them on to me, send them on to the BCP, or Brexit call, you know, and the department will hopefully be able to answer any of those queries for you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Okay. Thanks a million, Tom. Okay. Cheers now. Bye. Bye-bye.
Right, guys, we have a number of questions that came in. I think we'll take them, the general Brexit questions that have been sent in to Seamus. So if we take them first, and then if you have other questions, we can pop them in the chat box. I don't know, Carson, are you online? Don't know if Carson make it or not. We might give Carson from BIFA in Northern Ireland maybe joining us, and I leave the Northern Irish ones then, just he might be able to come in on that. We give him another few minutes. So one here, I've been approached by a UK company who will have full loads from UK to Ireland on DDP basis, and they've approached us in regards to doing their clearances. I just need to go back to them, but I just want to be sure I give them the correct information. They've asked if we can do the export clearance in the UK and import clearance here on arrival. I presume we can do both once we have the GB VAT number and the Irish VAT number is correct. Also, they've asked about the ENS and the PBN, if we can do this for them also. As far as I'm aware, this is done by the haulier. So the PBN and the GVMS, or sorry, the ENS you have here and the PBN. The PBN, I think, will be easy for a haulier to do. The ENS will not be easy for a haulier to do because he'll need access to software such as Time IT or something similar, because he'll have to access the EU database to create the ENS. And he's not going to be familiar in general with tariff codes and descriptions and maybe EORI numbers for carriers and so on. So I would not be at all surprised to see that would fall on our side of the table to complete those declarations. So again, you build in, understand what your costs are in that, and offer it, I would think, as a service to your customer or to the haulier, because they are going to find it very difficult to do it themselves, because they just don't have access to the software that's needed for the ENS. With regard to the PBN, that is a free open access. It is outside any security on the revenue website. So it's just a web portal. You go into the web portal, you cut and paste, if you want, your MRN numbers into the web portal, and you ask it to create a PBN. Anybody can access it. The haulier, the driver, the freight forwarder, the shipper, the consignee, anybody can access it. A stranger off the street could access it. So you need to be careful again with the PBN that only one PBN is created per load. So make sure there's good communication within your supply chain, that you know who is completing the PBN. You don't want two PBNs created because it's going to cause confusion for your shipments. But anybody can create a PBN. The website or the web portal is available for test at the moment. So maybe Seamus can send a link out later on to the membership, so you can log on to the website. It is very, very easy to use the PBN and to create a PBN. Now, when it goes live, you will only be able to use it for live loads 1 minute after 11 p.m. on the 31st of December. So don't bother trying to paste in, well, you won't be able to put in an MRN in advance because you won't be able to send them down the line anyway. But it will only be live from 1 minute past 11 p.m. on the 31st of December. Up till that, you can test it, or at the moment you can test it, and it's very, very easy to use. So I would recommend everybody would have a look at it. But agree with between shipper, consignee, the haulier, freight forwarder in the UK, freight forwarder in Ireland, who is going to do the PBN, who is going to do the GVMS, and who is going to do the ENS. As I say, I think it'll be very difficult for hauliers to do an ENS. I think that it's a natural part of what we do because of our customs brokerage experience.
Tom, can I just jump in there in regard to the GVMS, if that's okay with you? As far as I'm aware at the moment, only somebody with a UK EORI GB number can get access to that, and the portal isn't live yet. That's my understanding.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, so you cannot, you must have a GB EORI number, which again is very easy to get. Like if you haven't got one, go off and get one. As an Irish company, you can get a GB EORI number, which would allow you access to GVMS if you want to give that as part of a service. So it's very, very easy to get. It is not currently live, you're correct. It probably will not be live for the 1st of January. They still are saying, I think, that it'll be live for dealing with transits from the 1st of January. I don't know if Pavel is on. Pavel, are you here?
Hi, Tom. I was just going to jump in actually on that just quickly. I mean, the registration module is actually live. It went live on the 8th, so just over a week ago. So you can actually register for the system, although there's been some issues reported. If you're trying to register, you may get an oops, sorry, an error kind of message. But as you said, I mean, getting an EORI number in the UK is a relatively simple process. Just make sure that you read what's asked of you, basically, because we got some questions about, the system's asking me if I have a UTR number. I'm not even in the UK. Well, just basically tick the I'm not in the UK box, and it's not going to ask you for that kind of information, basically. But the system's live in the sort of registration aspect. You will be able to create your first GMRs in a week's time on the 23rd. And as you said, the system will only be operational for inbound goods moving under transit, because the primary purpose on day one will be to handle or to automate the Office of Transit formalities on arrival, basically. Goods moving under standard pre-lodge customs declaration will not need to be manifested on the GVMS. or if anyone's using this delayed declaration scheme, then you don't have to use the GVMS for that. And just like with the PBN, as you said, it's the same. I mean, even though the legal responsibility in a way lies with the haulier, I would imagine the freight forwarders will be more than just simply involved on occasion with that, because, as you say, it's a natural part of what we do. Like I say, the legislation sort of makes that distinction.
Yeah, we have to share the MRNs anyway, so it's nearly be as easy to put them into the PBN as anything else. But Pavel, are you saying that you think it will be operationally available from the 1st of January?
Yeah, it will be. I mean, obviously, I'm not in charge of the system, so if something goes wrong on day one, don't bang on my door. But the system, it's very important that this system is live for transit, simply because we want to automate the office of transit. Otherwise, the customs officers will have to be there with the little scanners, and all the drivers moving goods under transit will have to report at the location, physical location. So it's manageable, but certainly, as customs say, suboptimal.
Yeah. Okay. So we've a few kind of UK-oriented questions. If I could throw them at you, Pavel, while we have you there, and appreciate you coming on. In the event of an FTA being agreed, is it envisaged that the REX system will be used for trade between EU and GB?
It would really have to be in the actual free trade agreement text, because REX is an EU system, and you'd imagine that it would be used in certain circumstances. I mean, that would be a logical and a sort of natural thing to do, but I can't really comment on that until we actually have seen the text of the agreement, which from what we hear is very likely. I would imagine that REX would be a natural part of the sort of trading environment, though.
Okay. I was wondering, are you aware of the clearance process for imports into the UK? We are hearing that on arrival into the UK for non-controlled goods, that shipments do not have to be cleared immediately. This is not EIDR option of clearing in 6 months' time. We are also being told that for import shipments that are cleared on arrival, that all clearances will be green routed, that no exams will be called. Are you aware of this?
Okay. Well, during this sort of 6-month grace period, if you want to call that, from the 1st of January until the end of June, there will be two basic options effectively for non-controlled goods, because for controlled goods, which is mainly excise goods and a number of sort of licensable goods, for which you will effectively have only one option, which is a full declaration at the border. You will have two options. One, which is that simplified delayed declaration scheme, which will in fact allow eligible traders. That's very important, because not everyone can use it. Actually, it's if you are not deemed to be a fit and proper trader, you will receive an exclusion letter from the HMRC saying that as much as we like you, you're not allowed to do that, basically, and your agents will not be able to use their own authorization, even if you have one, on your behalf under direct or indirect representation. So that's important to remember. But if the trader, the importer, for example, wants to use this process, what it means is that they will be able to use entry into declarants record type process at the border. So it's not like there is no customs declaration. There is a customs declaration. That customs declaration is just simply not submitted into the customs system. It's made into declarant's record. And it's very important, because this customs declaration, the EIDR type deck, it has its own data set. So you have to make sure that you include all the data as requested and legally required in that customs declaration. It has to be done electronically. It has to have a specific record number as well, and it has to be unique as well, as you can imagine. Basically, it's effectively a full customs declaration, really, because you have to tell us, or you have to record who the actual seller is, the buyer, the commodity code, the customs procedure code, the customs value of the goods, so not just the invoice value of the goods, which may be the same, but it doesn't have to be, depending on the title or the Encode terms. And a few other things. So that customs declaration in your own records has to be before the goods actually arrive in the country. And once the goods have actually physically arrived in the country, you have to update that customs declaration in your own records by putting the date of arrival, which will effectively create the tax point. And from that point onward, you have 6 months to submit a supplementary declaration. But in order to submit a supplementary declaration. You either have to become authorized in your own name for simplified declaration procedures, or you will have to find someone who's authorized or will be willing to become authorized, and then will be willing to use their own authorization on your behalf. So it's not like it's oh, there's no customs process kind of thing. No. It's deceitful in a way, you could say, because a lot of people underestimate the burden that's attached to it. If you want to use this procedure, you effectively say to customs, okay, thank you for allowing me to move the goods across the border, just simply using entry into declarants records, because that saves me the time associated normally with getting connected to the customs systems, with having to apply for an authorization, etc., etc. But at the same time, customs tell you, okay, fair enough, we've given you this 6-month grace period by which you have to get authorized properly or find someone with an authorization. Make sure you can submit a supplementary declaration using a customs authorized system into, well, mainly Chief, let's be honest. I mean, I know CDS is going to be operational sometime next year, or it is operational, but not necessarily for border processes. So be very much aware of that. And like I'm saying, I do see a lot of issues, although perhaps I'm a bit too pessimistic with this particular process. I'll go quiet here because.
And the CFSP.
A CFSP is effectively your simplified declarations for imports. So if you're a CFSP authorized trader today, you will be able to use your CFSP authorization as you want to, as you do today, for goods coming from the EU. If you are a CFSP authorized trader, and if you want to use delayed declaration procedure for goods coming from the EU, don't forget it's only applicable to goods in free circ in the EU. You can't use the delayed declarations for anything that says coming from China or US. It only applies to EU goods, and in free circ as well. That's important. So if you are a CFSP authorized trader today, you will be able to use that delayed declaration scheme and then submit the supplementary decks by the expiry day of that 6-month grace period. But effectively, anyone who's wishing to use that delayed declaration scheme will effectively have to either apply for CFSP in their own right, or find someone who's already authorized and will be willing to use their own authorization on their behalf.
So we have CFSP, which is for EU free circulatory goods. We have EIDR, which is probably going to be a little bit more rare. What do you think is going to be the most common import declaration that we will deal with an exporter from Ireland going into the UK? Or what should we be asking? What question do we need to ask of the UK importer?
It's difficult to tell, Tom. I mean, it's all anecdotal evidence. I mean, when we speak to our colleagues from other organisations, actually representing importers or the actual buyers, sellers, the message we get is that most of the members will actually be looking at the proper sort of pre-lodged full customs declaration at the border, because they don't want to apply for CFSP. They don't want to deal with all the admin that comes with CFSP. Let's not forget, CFSP is not for everyone. I mean, that's why we don't use it very commonly today, and that's why very few freight forwarders use it as well, because it's mainly for the actual importer, and it's a specific type of importer as well. Usually high volume traders, people who need to move goods quickly from the border, but then they have the necessary software, the admin, that will allow them to keep everything in place and keep the sort of whole administration basically under control. So like I say, the message we seem to be getting is that most people would be looking at the pre-lodged customs declaration when you send a pre-lodgement into Chief or at a certain point into CDS, and then basically just hand the entry number to your haulier. And that haulier will have to declare that entry number before the goods can cross into the UK. That's what we get, but time will tell. It's very difficult to tell at the moment.
And in the early days, if GVMS is not working for the import declaration, what do we do?
Well, it's two things really here. I mean, the visibility of the authorities will get of what's moving across the country, which is effectively close to nil. because when you think about it, the HMRC will only see what's moving under transit during the first 6 months at least, because that will have to be manifested on the GVMS, and the GVMS will perform the Office of Transit formalities automatically. But when it comes to goods moving under a pre-lodged or the simplified delayed declarations, then the visibility is minimal, because I don't think that the ferry operators will share the data with HMRC, but the ferry operator will be under obligation to have a reasonable belief, and that's the sort of term used in the legislation, that the goods are free to enter the country. So the ferry operator will expect you to either say that these goods are moving under this delayed declaration EIDR process, and ask you for the EORI number of the trader who will be using that process, or will ask you whether these goods have a pre-lodged customs declaration for import, and consequently ask you for an entry number. Or the customs usually refer to the entry numbers as MRNs, but the MRN is a very sort of generic term. It's more like an umbrella term, which basically means everything from a transit MRN to an entry number for import or export, effectively. So don't get sort of don't get disturbed by the fact that it's always MRN. MRN is anything really that's a reference applicable to any customs movement, effectively. And
if somebody has CFSP or claims to have CFSP, should they have some kind of authorization number to give us?
If you are a CFSP authorized trader, there's two ways you can do that today, basically. I mean, obviously you use it for rest of the world traffic, so mainly stuff that comes from Asia or America, and there is a process described in your authorization. Most use the simplified declaration process for import, which means there is a simplified DEC at the border, which is a reduced data set in a way, and then it's followed up by sub-DEC by the 4th working day of the following month. That's the standard process. There are some variations within the process, but that's I would imagine that applies to about 80% of traders. So from the 1st of January, you will have two options effectively. If you are a CFSP trader today, you will be able to use your standard process for goods coming from the EU, as you do today for, say, anything else that comes from China or America. And if you are authorized to, say, use SDP, the simplified DEC for import, you will still submit your you'll still submit your simplified declaration for import, and you get a normal customs declaration reference. So it's not treated as a delayed declaration as such. So you would present this customs declaration number to the haulier or whoever's booking the crossing, because that will be required. So it's no, to the outsider's eyes, it would be no different to a normal full pre-lodge declaration, because there is a customs declaration in a customs system which generates a customs recognized entry number. Alternatively, as an authorized CFSP trader, you will be able to use this delayed declaration scheme still for goods coming from the EU, and then you will have to follow this EIDR process. So if you want to use delayed declarations, you have to do EIDR, and then you will have to follow some, or you have to meet some other criteria. So that's adds to the sort of complexity of this thing, because probably if you've been listening to what I've been saying for the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes, it gets confusing, and a lot of people do get kind of, he said this, and then he says this. So what's the right process? Well, if you're a CFSP authorized trader, you effectively have two options to choose from. And one which is the standard one, and the other one which is that funny one which allows you to move goods under an EIDR and gives you 6 months to submit a sub-DEC. So like it does get confusing, Tom. I'm afraid, I know that. I understand the process. It's clear to me, but I know it's not clear to most. So
we'll give you a little rest there, Pavel, and let the guys maybe have other questions, and we mightn't get to them today, but we emailed them to you. You will come back to us at your convenience, and we could update the members then, if that's okay, if we don't get any more done. Thanks, Pavel. I have one more question for you though before you go, but I'll just give you a little break there. So there's a question: is there an Irish PBN required from GB to IE and not a UK GVMS declaration? So the system works in both jurisdictions. GVMS is on the UK side. The PBN, which is based on the Customs Ro-Ro service, is on the Irish side. And don't forget, if you're crossing into France, you will have the SE Brexit version on the Dover French side. So the GVMS is for the UK authorities, the PBN is for the Irish authorities. So you will complete both ultimately when you're moving from the UK to Ireland. You will have a GMR and you will have a PBN when both systems are fully functioning. In the short term, we may not have a GVMS, but when it's all fully functioning, you will have a GMR and a PBN, because they're satisfying two different jurisdictions. Will the GBIE PBN accept the HMRC declaration numbers as MRNs? So your UK MRNs go into your GVMS system, and your Irish MRNs go into your PBN, and you're not crossing them. Your European ENS, entry summary declaration, for an export from the UK coming to Ireland will go into your PBN. So the European requirements and the Irish requirements go into the PBN, the UK requirements go into the GVMS. Are the ferry operators in GB working with the Irish PBN system, or will they ship without it? So the ferry operators have access then to both systems. So when you arrive at Holyhead, they're going to check that you have a valid PBN that is giving you a clean routing to ship, and ultimately, when it's all fully functioning, that you have a valid GMR that's giving you a clear routing to ship. And vice versa, ultimately, when we're going from Ireland out, you would expect to see the same, a PBN and a GMR giving you a clean, good to ship routing. So the ferry operators see both sides, because they're connecting both jurisdictions, so they have to see both sides. Both sides have to tell them this truck is okay to ship, otherwise you'll get turned away from the report, from the port. But just watch the GVMS. If it's not fully functioning in the early days, then I think we probably will be ignoring it. But I think Pavel kind of nodded there that if it's not fully functioning at the start, we'll be ignoring the GVMS. But the PBN is fully functioning. The plan is that it's fully functional from the 1st of January, from 11 p.m. actually on the 31st of December. One question in relation to Brexit, it might be more for BIFA than for IIFA, but perhaps other members face the same question. We control some container export traffic from a client in Liverpool to Italy. Will a TAD have to be raised to cover the load as it crosses several EU frontiers before reaching its final destination? So you're going to go on transit, and you'll have to decide where you can first clear that load. And I think the second part of that question is, would fiscal representation at first EU port of arrival, in this case Zeebrugge, be an alternative? So that's a conversation to be had, I guess, with the importer in Italy as to where they best want to have those goods cleared. Can they bring them, maybe they can bring them to their own premises if they're an approved consignee. They could go all the way to Italy and get cleared at their own premises, or they may be happy that you clear them at the first point of entry into the EU, but those options need to be discussed with the customer in Italy. If they want them in Italy, then yes, it's a transit the whole way through. Correct, Pavel? Yeah, okay. Carson, did you make it on board? Calling Carson?
I sent him a message, but
yeah,
he was on our meeting earlier today. But right. I know he was running to meet a customer, so maybe. Okay.
So we have a couple of Northern Ireland, and probably Pavel can tell me if I'm wrong here. So can goods originating in Northern Ireland under XI registered companies move unfettered to UK via Dublin, Rosslare to UK ports and without requirement for declaration in AEP being our export system? Reason for asking is that shippers in Northern Ireland have advised that space on ferries must be booked 3 weeks in advance due to capacity pressure on vessels, so looking to route via Dublin or Rosslare. I understand the at-risk guideline for goods originating in the UK mainland that may end up being transferred to EU, but that can be covered by XI plus cert of origin requirement. However, I am talking about goods from NI to UK via ROI. So NI UK via ROI, in my humble opinion, is transit. And you will open your transit in Northern Ireland, and you will close it at the first point of entry then back into the UK free circulatory environment. So your options then with Northern Ireland will be to open your transit either at Belfast Customs Office or using an ACR. And there are quite a few ACRs up there, I would think. So if you have a friendly forwarder up there that will allow you to open the transit from their premises, then that's probably the easiest solution. And Pavel can either tell me if I'm right or wrong with that.
I'll try not to tell you that you're wrong, Tom,
Okay,
because you know I wouldn't risk that. But perhaps this, how should I put it? Perhaps the system may work slightly differently. Let's put it this way. No, but in all fairness, you can always choose to use transit. I mean, transit is always an option. Although I would say try not to use it unless you really have to, because transit is an additional layer of complexity. Transit is strings attached. You have to start it, you have to end it, you have to put a guarantee. So you can always use that, but effectively, unless you have to really use it, try not to. It will be possible to move goods from Northern Ireland via the Republic to GB, not UK, on a customs declaration for export, because that's a new thing actually. So that's why there's so much confusion, and that's, you know, everything I say about Northern Ireland, Tom, is if you ask me in a week's time for validation, I may be saying something completely different. I'll be absolutely honest with you, because the legislation is so it's changing so rapidly, and you can never be sure that whatever you're saying today in the morning will still be valid in the afternoon when it comes to Northern Ireland. So, but from what we understand, the latest is you will be able to send goods from Northern Ireland via the Republic on a customs declaration for export. The TSS, this service which will be available, will apparently be able to provide that export declaration service as well. We're not quite sure what this declaration will require from the NI trader, but you'd imagine there's going to be a standard export deck, and this standard export deck would somehow, I would imagine, have to be, I don't know, would it have to be confirmed for departure in Dublin? I haven't got a clue.
Yeah,
but there's going to be an option which will allow you not to use transit effectively.
Yeah, but so NI have and Her Majesty's government decided that NI would not have to make export declarations to get to GB.
If it's a direct crossing from NI to GB, there is no requirement. Although let's not forget that you may remember we had this internal market bill, which luckily never really became the proper act, with the provisions saying that we're going to break the law in some limited and specific sort of way. I can't remember what the wording was, but that was specifically designed to actually allow Northern Irish traders to send goods to GB without the requirement for a customs declaration for export. Because when you read the protocol, it just says that the EU and the UK will try and do everything in their powers to minimize the burden on the exporters. And it doesn't necessarily say there's no export declaration for goods. But from what we understand, there's not going to be a requirement for goods moving directly from Northern Ireland to GB. But if these goods are moving via the Republic, there will be a requirement for a customs declaration for export. That's my current understanding. And like I'm saying, I'm not taking full responsibility for the accuracy of my words, simply because these are all new policies. It's the last few days. I haven't really had the chance to read the legislation, to read the guidance. We had a reading room session just before this session on all the legislation that's going to be laid before Parliament, and it's all Northern Ireland related. So like I'm saying, I'm not fully confident that what I'm saying is correct, but I think that's how it's going to work.
My transit might trump your export declaration.
It might, yes. It certainly. Transit is always an option. There's no doubt about that. So
we know that transit would work. The thing we'd have to check is as well, will the Irish revenue and PBN system accept an XIMRN then to satisfy the PBN? So we'll check that. But thank you for that, Pavel. It would be a simpler option if it is functioning. It was the second part of that question. According to Brexit revenue team, XI or EI importer, I guess that's IE importer, EORI can be used as appropriate in the AIS system, that's our import system, but can both be used in Northern Ireland HMRC system, CDS or Chief, while waiting on CNS issues to be resolved. So can we use an XI or IE import or EORI number in CDS or Chief?
You can, there's quite a lot of confusion about those XI EORI numbers. I mean, obviously you can use it in Chief and CDS because, you know, XI EORI numbers are UK numbers,
UK
simple
ones,
as
yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah.
My understanding, and again, that's my understanding, so I'll make it very clear, is that XI EORI numbers will also be recognized as EU EORI numbers at the same time, unlike GB EORI numbers. So I would imagine that your custom system, the Irish custom system, will be able to recognize XI EORI numbers. I don't think that Chief or CDS will, however, recognize IE EORI numbers, because effectively, whatever we say, let's not forget that with this whole very complex, you know, legally complex arrangement, which allows for unfettered access of Northern Irish goods to the rest of the European Union, Northern Ireland is still in the customs territory of the United Kingdom. There's still a United Kingdom, so you know, we have to stress that. And like, effectively, it's CDS or Chief are UK-specific customs systems, and a customs clearance in Chief or customs clearance in CDS is not an EU customs clearance. So that's my interpretation. I think I'm right, but again, I always leave that sort of element of doubt here because of the complexity of this whole setup. Really, I mean,
Yeah.
it really is difficult to understand.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So another one. There's a comment in the chat box. Tom, are you aware of any system which Irish freight forwarders can lodge an export UK entry for an export into Ireland on behalf of some of my clients' exports shippers? Yes, you can. So an Irish forwarder can establish in the UK and can complete export declarations from the UK into Ireland. And in fact, some of the software suppliers that we currently use can use your export declaration and then flip it to make it into an import declaration. So if you talk to your software supplier to make sure that they can do that for you. But if you're established in the UK, then you can do the export declaration in the UK. Does the Irish agent need to be registered in the UK, or do they get an authorization from HMRC to use Chief? So yes, you have to be established in the UK, and you have to be badged by HMRC, I suppose we would say, Pavel. Yeah, you have to be badged by HMRC to allow you to access their systems then to make those export declarations. And been asked to arrange UK export declarations for export shipments. So initially I was looking for a UK agent, but if this is an option without requiring a physical presence or registration in the UK, it would suit greatly. So you must be established in the UK, and if you check out what the established means and you satisfy that criteria, then you can complete export declarations in the UK from Ireland, in fact, and use your software then to flip those over and make them into import declarations. And I actually think we've covered most of those questions there, believe it or not. Just a couple of quickies I wanted to make you aware of. As I said, the PBN test system is open and available, so you should try and use it. My own expectation is that PBN work will fall on us. The ENS work will fall on us, and the import declarations, our export declarations, will fall on us, and by and large transits will fall on us. So you should be looking at your systems to make sure that you can complete all of those. Make sure if you have a TSF that you have the ability to do an e-manifest, as Time IT call it, so that you can create your G3, G4s when you bond a trailer to your warehouse. If you're going to try and bond, you must start it in the UK. So you must start your T1 in the UK to bring you right through to your TSF. You cannot do it from Dublin Port. You must have MRNs lodged in advance. So you either have to have an MRN for your transit or an MRN for your declarations lodged before you will get access to the port in Holyhead. So you make your choice at the start. You decide are you going to bond or are you going to clear the port. Keep your eyes open for SPS goods. Don't get caught bringing SPS goods out to your warehouse. It's only going to be a nightmare for you. In relation to direct representation, a question was asked, can we delegate our direct representation to another forwarder? And the answer to that question is yes. There are two lines that we're going to recommend that you would add into your direct rep form if you want to pursue that, which would allow you then to be a direct rep with your customer, but then you could delegate that representation down to another forwarder to actually make those declarations on your behalf. So I'll send some information to Seamus and he will share that hopefully with the group. Good news for once, T2s will be automatically discharged at port on arrival digitally without having to queue in the transit lane to get the T2 discharged. But your driver or your haulier must still check to make sure they have a green routing. They cannot assume that they have a green routing. They must check that they have a green routing. But in theory, if you have a load coming back in from Europe on T2, that T2 will be digitally discharged, so you don't have to queue in the transit lane to get it dealt with. If you're on T1 and it's terminating at Dublin Port, then you go into the transit lane, you get the transit closed, you cannot leave the port until the import declaration that would be associated with that load is processed and cleared. So you have nearly a three-step process with T1s. You have to queue up, get the T1 discharged, then wait, make sure the import declaration gets the green routing, and then exit the port. And otherwise, I think that is it from my side. If there's any questions here, we'll just deal with them quickly. Do we have to create a transit going to the UK from Dublin in the first 6 months? Yes, if you're going to go inland in the UK, if you're going to a TSF in the UK, you would have to move under transit, correct, Pavel? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a standard transit process, really.
Yeah, standard transit, yeah. Simplified procedure, ideally, move straight through the port out to your TSF. What else is there? Hashem is going to post a link.
Could I ask Pavel a quick question just in regard to T2s? I'll be doing T2s from Dublin to Heathrow, some air freight cargo that's going on out to Asia. Do we need to stop at Holyhead or can we just keep driving?
You will have to use, for anything that's moving under transit, so obviously T2, T1, regardless of the status, really, it's about the CTC. You will have to use the GVMS. So the GVMS would automate the Office of Transit.
Yeah.
So when the driver arrives at Holyhead, the GVMS system will do that. You will not, the driver will not even see that, and he just drives on to Heathrow. That's the whole thing about the GVMS, which I think is really, really useful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Import from China at Dublin under Irish EORI and deliver is for Belfast. How does this work? It depends on... you're importing, so it's a Northern Irish importer, is it? Or is it a Republic of Ireland importer and you're delivering it to Belfast? It depends on what the... Is Galaxy A82018 online here?
Yeah, that's myself here, Tom.
Yeah. So
you're coming into Dublin, cleared in Dublin, using for an Irish customer using their EORI number, but the delivery is just for Belfast.
Right, nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Exact same process in the future, unless Boris comes up with something that we haven't heard of yet. When you clear in the Republic of Ireland, you're in free circulation in the EU, and Northern Ireland is within that free circulatory environment, let's call it, provided those goods are not being sent into Northern Ireland for the purposes of avoidance of tax. So just make sure nobody's playing silly buggers and trying to use the Republic of Ireland as a backdoor into GB. Just be aware of that. The Joint Commission that's been set up is there to observe this type of trade, to make sure that people are adhering to the spirit of this agreement and not trying to use it as a backdoor. So if it's a trade that's currently happening that way, there's absolutely no problem with it continuing happening that way. Import into ROI, it's in free circulation, and Northern Ireland is considered to be within that free circulatory environment.
Okay, great, thanks.
Perhaps a little caveat here, Tom, because obviously that would be the case when the importer is in the Republic, but if the importer is in in Northern Ireland, perhaps using transit would be a little easier, although there will be a lot of VAT implications for goods traded between the Republic and Northern Ireland. And I don't really want to go into that because it's a can of worms, but it's not going to affect us directly, but our customers, the actual buyers and the sellers, because the setup for VAT accounting for goods moving to and from Northern Ireland and the rest of Europe, it's, let's say it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Anyway, that is a kind of a specialist area, so we leave it for the VAT guys to sort out. And there was a comment in earlier about used farm machinery needs to be pre-notified to DAFM, and the tariff code doesn't differentiate between new and used, which is fair enough. But it is an important point that people may not be aware of, that used farm machinery, you will have to, coming from the UK obviously, has to have a phytosanitary cert and needs to be pre-notified and will always go for examination at the port. So just be aware of that if you're bringing in used farm machinery from the UK. Again, part of your almost part of your SPS check environment, that will go for examination. So ideally, I would say clear that at the port. If it's a part of a shipment, clear it at the port. Don't try and bond that trailer out to your warehouse. It's 12 minutes past 2, guys. So I think we'll cut it at that. Thanks a million, Pavel, for joining in today.
Tom, if I could make a quick comment, because that may be of interest. It will quite literally be a minute. Just to let you know, it's a relatively new development, but it will be possible for traders who are not established in the UK to apply for duty deferment accounts. So it's not necessarily for us as customs agents or freight forwarders, but our customers. And, you know, a lot of them may already have a deferment account because they're established in the EU. They will be able to retain those duty deferment accounts. They will obviously still have to keep their guarantees in place, etc., etc. But that's a change as compared to the UCC, which always requires the trader to be established if they want to have a deferment account, CCG, or benefit from special procedures. But again, it's perhaps a notice for EU, Irish established traders who already operate special procedures in the UK. If they are not established, they will basically lose the right to use those special procedures again, because that establishment element criterion will still apply. So yeah, just to let you know, because it may be important for some.
Okay, thanks, Pavel. Appreciate it. The last thing, guys, I'm going to share with Seamus a slide deck. There was a presentation from the UK side I sat in on during the week where they go through transit, particularly transit coming from France into Ireland, and I think they cover transit from Ireland out. There's a very well explained process that we have to follow, and particularly when it comes to if you're moving SPS goods in transit. So I shared it with Seamus, and he'd probably stick it up on the website. It's quite a hefty file, so he'd probably stick it up on the website. There's 4 case studies for traffic in and out of the UK and transit through the UK for Irish customers. Well worth having a look at. So I'll pop it on and I'll give it to Seamus, and Seamus can put it on the website. I'll have a look at it. Somehow I don't think this is going to be our last chat before Christmas, so I'm not going to wish you a happy Christmas yet. We may have to talk again. If you have questions, if you want to have another meeting, let Seamus know and we will try and go again for another hour at some other lunchtime. So other than that, thanks again to Pavel for your time today. Really appreciate it, and see you guys in the near future.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Tom, cheers, Paul.
Cheers, Declan. Anybody looking for the agriculture presentation? It's on the Brexit Centre of the website already.
You're super efficient. Show off.
I don't try my best.
I'm trying to leave this. Oh yeah, there we go.
Bye.
Bye.